Hi, and welcome to Manti's Book Club. Today we continue reading through Profession Witch. If you're watching this on Twitch, you can find previous episodes on my YouTube channel, acidmanticore, and the record of this episode will be uploaded to my YouTube channel tomorrow or day after. So, if this is the first stream that you see, you can safely pause it and go listen to the beginning of the book. Or you can continue listening to this one and go see what happens at the beginning later. Today we start with chapter 5. It was pitch dark outside. The moon retreated into a shaggy cloud, not wanting to take part in my sad destiny. The stars twinkled coldly and maliciously. Large green grasshoppers chirped shrilly in the depths of the sparse bushes. Something was croaking in the distance, probably frogs, although here in the Geva you cannot be sure of anything. Not a single light, not a single spark, no signs of civilization, except for Camomile's warm face, which I felt for a long time in the pitch darkness. I wish at least one window would light up. Is everyone already asleep? Or maybe they just aren't sleeping. They sneak up, come in for a landing, stretch their clawed paws towards the fragile girl's neck. The hand that lightly touched my shoulder was not clawed at all. Fingers like fingers, long, sensitive, nails like nails, neatly trimmed. The vampire that knocked on the window was patiently waiting for me on the porch. Next second he howled and bent over, sadly crossing his arms below his waist. "Oh, sorry," I muttered in embarrassment. I mechanically. No, nothing," he lied bravely. "Let's go. I'll take you." I walked a little further and heard him groaning and stumbling. "Oh, it would be better if he beat me," I repented. There was a rustling sound up ahead. The vampire I had hit was trying to feel for the door handle, but it slipped from under his fingers like a nimble loach in a muddy puddle. The self-defense was a great success. But finally he got the handle, turned it, the door creaked, and I saw a black void against the background of the grey frame. The vampire, without letting go of the handle and at the same time trying to stay as far away from me as possible, nodded towards the rectangular hole into nowhere. Turning back for the last time, I stepped over the threshold doomedly. The door slammed behind me like a coffin lid. Darkness and silence enveloped me in a dense cocoon. I stood there, staggering on my heels and assessing the situation. What crypt did they drag me into? After thinking for a little bit, I came to the conclusion that I was in a hallway and the crypt itself was further along the corridor, perhaps in the basement. I extended my arms and took a few hesitant steps forward. Emptiness. And a very unpleasant but unfounded premonition that the floor under my feet is about to end. Two more steps and something hit me in the chest. I frantically grabbed the mysterious creature by the horns. The horns were short, square, and wooden to the touch. Long, smooth fur grew between them. "Hey, is anyone alive here?" I yelled, losing patience. And then the candles lit up, one after another, making me blink and squint. I stood in the middle of the long room, clutching the back of a low chair, and felt the back of the head of the vampire sitting on it. Behind the chair there was a table for 30 people. Said people were sitting in their places, and 3 candelabra, branched like the antlers of a red deer in its 10th year, illuminated a white tablecloth laid with all kinds of dishes. My heels gave way and I staggered, frantically clinging to the chair. Mischievous wind opened the door and swept across the room with curiosity. The lightweight skirt puffed up like a bubble, and the vampire sitting at the table had the pleasure of seeing not only the lower, but also the upper parts of my thighs. To the credit of those present, they did not allow themselves a single chuckle. While I was struggling with my skirt, one of them stood up and closed the door. In an atmosphere of funeral seriousness, one of the elders stood up, greeted me dryly and formally, introduced me to the guests, and kindly pulled out the chair reserved for me. I hesitated for a moment. If I were a master of the fourth lowest degree, I would consider myself insulted. The place allotted to me was at the opposite end of the table from Leon and on the long side, so that the Lord was blocked from me by 28 shoulders and 14 heads. Okay, I'm just an adept, but I'm also a guest. And the guest is supposed to sit next to, or at least opposite, the host. Nevertheless, I sat down and folded my hands politely in my lap. Without much joy informing me that I was very welcome in the gaba, the elder also sat down and gave the sign to begin the meal. The formality of the informal dinner was oppressive. Tension filled the air. Nobody touched the food. The fallen spoon clanked in surprise. I really didn't understand anything. I was greeted so warmly originally. What has changed? Why does Leon lower his eyes to his plate and not even look in my direction? Maybe he's ashamed of an oncoming crime? He has long fangs, he's hungry for blood. A quote from Bloodsuckers caught in my memory surfaced before my eyes. Arius, what's wrong? Your charming neighbor may be left without dinner, the elder addressed vampire sat beside me. Apparently, the hungry maiden did not evoke much appetite among the bloodsuckers. Arius, having come to his senses, began to praise began praising to me the nearest dish decorated with parsley and reminiscent of deep fried eyes. I kindly, internally shuddering, refused. Then I was offered blood sausage, black wrinkled ring, aspic, most likely from the legs of babies, liver pate from liver of unknown origin, ham, definitely human, and similar disgusting things. I wisely limited myself to a rice salad with yellow grains unknown to me and the chicken wing baked whole, which raised any doubt. Ignoring my timid protests, Arios poured a spoonful of ice onto my plate, praising them with such enthusiasm as if he were gouging them out himself. Plates clattered, forks clinked. It was the vampires looking at me who began to eat. Lon, as I noticed, also chose a rice salad, and it was quite good, and the grains had a delightfully sweet taste. Having eaten the wing, I felt a surge of appetite. After after a meager breakfast, I didn't have a crumb in my mouth. But the eyes, now it's beyond my strength. I timidly pricked one bowl with a fork. Clear yellowish juice came out. That's disgusting. The neighbor devoured the ice with an ominous crunch, dabbing his lips with a napkin from time to time. What is this, I wonder? I put the fork on its edge and pulled it towards me. The bowl exploded, and drops of juice settled on the wall of a tall salad bowl and the forehead of the guest opposite. In an effort to hush up the embarrassment, I quickly stuck half of the eye into my mouth and walked with my jaws almost not feeling the taste. Until it did. I wish it was an eye. It was small cabbage in a crispy dough. Day before yesterday, I just got poisoned by cabbage at a low quality eatery, and now the mere memory of it made me feel sick. And it was in my mouth. I politely dabbed my lips with a napkin, quietly spat the wonderful dish into it, and crumpled it up and threw it into a special bin under the table. "Can I ask you for a glass of water?" I asked, pushing the plate aside. His neighbor eagerly reached for the crystal decanter, and something red, thick, obviously of arterial origin, poured into the glass in a white stream. "Thank you," I squeezed out with difficulty, looking into the glass. "What kind of color is this?" "I hope it won't coagulate." I leaned forward a little and noticed a slight smile on the Lord's lips. Lon winked at me encouragingly and looked away. I timidly took a sip from my glass. Doesn't remind me of anything, some kind of juice. Kinda like pickle juice, but red. I sincerely hope that hemoglobin aftertaste was just my imagination. I turned to Leon again, but he was blocked by the vampire hanging over the table, leisurely picking with a fork into a dish of steaming chops. Meanwhile, a braided bottle with a protruding neck of dark glass plugged with a white stopper appeared on the table. I mechanically looked for the corkscrew, but then one of the vampires stuck two long, slightly curved inward white fangs in, the, in his upper jaw into the cork, like a knife into the butter. Difficulties arose with the release of the piece of cork, but even here the vampire managed with indifference of a professional who has been applying himself to both the girl's throat and the glass neck since infancy. Near the cutlery stood fragile, pot-bedded glasses on high legs, and the bottle gurgled melodiously as it parted with its contents. I was served first, and then the glasses were filled in a circle, starting from the opposite end of the table where the Lord and the Elder sat. The glass cast a ruby shadow onto the tablecloth. Leon picked it up in his palms like a tea rosebud. For your health, Volha. May it be as strong as your self-control. The vampires drank to my health with amazing enthusiasm. The wine turned out to be thick, tart sweet, with a taste of cherry leaves and black currant. And blood. The elders cast angry glances at Leon. The brevity of the toast bordered on rudeness, and it could be interpreted in different ways. I personally heard a veiled reproach. Fair one. Stop thinking about blood drinking. Down with vegetarian. Oh my god, that's a word. Vegetarianism. Erius, could you give me a piece of that charming ham? And more salad, please. Volga, I understand this is a modest question, but how old are you? Asked the blue-eyed elder. 20? I didn't lie. I just rounded up. Someone coughed violently, choking on my revelation. Why are you asking? I asked calmly, eating the salad with a crust of bread. You are so very young, the elder said cautiously. Well, I will always have time to grow old. It was a joke, but apparently a bad one, because a cough epidemic broke out in 3 places at once. Yes, of course, muttered the elder, exchanging meaningful glances with his colleagues on the council. For a magician, the main thing is not age, but innate abilities, I proudly announced, sipping a little hemoglobin tincture. Well, it isn't likely you'll need them here. Yes? How should I understand this? What about the ghoul? What ghoul? The elder feigned surprise. Yeah, this is exactly what I want to find out. I do not understand what you are talking about. The elder, with his eyes downcast, cricked his knife on the plate, dismembering the chop. I stared at him as if a resurrected dead man with an axe lodged in his forehead assured me of his excellent health. Uh, After cutting the chop up and down, the elder did not stop and continued to rhythmically saw it with his knife, spreading the fibers across the plate. I'm talking about the monster that killed the vicious dozen last month, I said inexorably. Oh, that monster! It dawned on the elder. Do not worry about such a trifle. You are our guest of honor, and we are not going to shift purely internal problems onto your shoulders. Rest, have fun, give yourself an extra vacation. What vacation? I'm here on a mission. What mission? The elders became tense and wary. I don't know what you're talking about. I shyly fluttered my eyelashes. But you said, what did I say? You mentioned the task, the blue-eyed man patiently reminded. What task? I became keenly interested. Why did you come to the Gava? The elder could not contain himself anymore. Well, finally, a relevant question, I feigned joy. Because, honestly, I'm already tired of feeling like a naive provincial girl on the hook of professional sharpers with marked cards. The sharps smiled crookedly and tensely. If we were really playing cards, the scammers caught in the act would quietly return my money or started pulling out their knives. The swindlers of the Geva continued the game as if nothing had happened. Come on, no one is trying to play with you. We just want to help you, and we will be much better at it if we know what kind of help is required from us. Oh, really? I raised my right eyebrow ironically. It seems to me that you were the ones who needed help. The elders began vying with each other to assure me that they did not need my invaluable help. Leon was silent, studying his plate and occasionally poking at it with his fork. It looked like cockroaches were swarming in his salad. Why, why then did you contact the Coven of Mages? I interrupted unceremoniously. As the city guard said in such cases, show us the criminal element or pay for the false call. Caught at his word, whoops, the blue-eyed man stopped short and cast a helpless glance at his colleagues on the council. The poor fellow resembled a hunting husky sent into the den of sleeping bear and discovering that the bear was not sleeping. The unfortunate dog did not know what to do next, and his colleagues crowded around the hall in indecision, looking back at the hunter, wholly absorbed in the salad. Leon behaved somewhat strangely, given the elder's Lysian part in the negotiations. Women's intuition is akin to telepathy, and I was not mistaken in coming to the conclusion that the elder feels as unusual in the skin of diplomat as Ram does in the role of a shepherd. It seems that because of me, Leon fell out with the council and is now gloating, watching from the sidelines at his advisors drowning in a swamp of lies and omissions. The elder made another attempt to clarify the hopelessly cloudy situation. 2 weeks have passed since the last attack, and before the monster appeared every 2 or 3 days. We believe it no longer poses a threat to the residents of the Geba. Yeah, no one has ever given me a more stupid argument. Do they worship this creature? I knew one dense village, the inhabitants of which made monthly sacrifices to the brown dragon, who lived in the neighborhood and supposedly promoted fertility and, well, in a different ways. But no amount of fertility could compensate for the decline in the Eton population, and the village was emptied in the matter of years. After which the dragon made a weak attempt to increase Starmin's fertility, but they did not need his help and fired at the benefactor from ballistas and catapults. During the autopsy, a whole warehouse of chains and shackles was found in the scaly reptile's belly. Which eloquently testified that shackling the victims for being eaten showed their strong disagreement with the village policy. The indigestible equipment was donated to the need of the prison and was very useful. The steel tempered by the dragon's gastric juice was not even taken with diamond files. Yeah, and Leon said it represents, I insisted, poses danger. The friendly reference to the Lord of the Geva finished them off. I licked a salty drop from my lower lip. So much for the taste of blood. Worried about waiting for a bite, I beat myself. The defeated elders still tried to object. They said that Leon is exaggerating, which is typical of youth. They themselves looked 30 to 35 years old. But in general, everything is in order. Everything will settle down by itself. Yeah, in the coffin, I added sarcastically, slightly intoxicated and somewhat relaxed. Isn't it, Lord? Leon vaguely shrugged his shoulders, which finally convinced me that the matter was unclean. Out of politeness, having finished my glass and my chop, I took my leave. I was not. They didn't try to stop me, we all had something to think about. And if thoughts were not on the same topic, but from the different points of view, if the thoughts are on the same topic but from different points of view, then they're better to be think about separately. Now, of course, I was helped up, brought to the door, showered with compliments, wished good night, good health, and other nonsense. Arius volunteered to accompany me. I refused, and on the way out, I almost knocked off a spruce tree with my forehead. Of course, I didn't leave right away. I stood listening at the door, but the vampires extinguished the candles and switched to a dramatic whisper, and only hissing and whistling sounds reached me. So I had to go home, groping for the spruce trees with my hands. Fortunately, the clouds had parted and the moon peeked out. Dark forests, jumping shadows and creaking branches did not frighten me. I simply did not notice them, immersed in my difficult thoughts. And anyway, what is there to be afraid in a city full of vampires? Just what kind of comedy were they performing in front of me? I think I found the answer, or something similar. They were more afraid of me than of the monster. They were panicking, expecting some kind of trick on my part, and I did not disappoint them, but I myself did not understand when and why. Every time I was about to say or ask something, they froze like mice before a viper. Everyone except the Lord. Since I inspire such antipathy in the elders, why didn't they just leave me alone? Let him care about me, not this polished Arius. Then he would have to participate more actively in conversation. But I got the far corner of the table. It's unlikely that they wanted to humiliate me, and it is unlikely that the Gava's etiquette prohibits foreigners from sitting at the head of the table. Okay, let's go from the opposite. Let's say I am sitting next to Leon. Who can I bother? And in general, what undesirable thing can you do while sitting next to the Lord? Kill him. Did they really think that I came to the Geva as an assassin? Who ordered to equip me with an aspen stake? What was in the teacher's letter? And why is Leon so important to the Geva? Why do they call a fair-haired guy who wanders around all day, God knows where, the Lord? According to him, the creature is the real scourge of the Geva. According to the elders, it is more harmless than a lamb. And the evil big bad wolf is just me. And yet, Leon seems to be on my side. Otherwise, he would have intervened. In short, only wood and why, and therefore is shrouded in the darkness of mystery. Shrouded in the darkness of mystery. While thinking, I did not notice how I got to my house. A grey dog with a torn ear was dozing by the porch. When it saw me, it raised his head but did nothing. Chapter 6. Karina was sleeping. I kicked off my shoes at the threshold, tiptoed into the room, closed the door and lit the candles. When leaving, I left the window wide open, and now a large bat was hanging upside down from the ceiling beam. Fat, hairy and disgusting, with transparent leaf-shaped nose and sharp teeth. It greeted me very hostilely, fussed and chirped, flapping her leathery wings. I politely greeted the bat and began to wait impatiently for it to turn into human, or rather, a vampire. But the bat was in no hurry. Apparently it was shy. Having made itself more comfortable, it wrapped itself in its wings and gloomily looked me up and down. There was so much contempt and pride in its gaze that the king's minted on coins were no match for it. I've long wanted to see a two-way transformation that allows vampires to take on the form of a bat and return to theirs. It interested me solely from a scientific point of view. I assume that with some waste materials you could make a mouse out of vampire, but how can you make a vampire out of a bat? It's easy, in my opinion, to make a mountain uh, out of a fly, to make an elephant out of a fly. And where do the clothes go? No one has ever seen a naked vampire. The chaste bloodsucker invariably drapes his body in a black cloak with a red lining. Meanwhile, the winged messenger completely forgot about the mission entrusted to it, yawned, pursed its lips, and closed its eyes, resigning itself to my presence in the interior. I delicately coughed. The bat perked up, glared at me with a murderous look, and reluctantly, as if doing me a favor, shat on the floor. It is unlikely that the ambassador could afford himself such a trick. I grabbed a towel, crumpled it up, and threw it at the bat, which fell off the beam and, flapping its wings, darted around the room in search of a way out. I picked up a towel and twirled it frighteningly over my head, pushing the mouse towards the window, through which it escaped after a short fight, shrilly cursing all my relatives up to the fifth generation. I closed the window, hastily undressed, and slipped under the blanket. In rural huts with clay floors, the laundry becomes damp within a few hours, and by morning the stale air presses on the chest like a tombstone. Vampires living in the same conditions have found some way to avoid this abomination. Clean, fresh sheets crunched under my mortal body. It smelled of jasmine. Well, fair. In the huts of human villagers, chickens, pigs, and kids tap dance on the benches in the morning. But here, rooms are smaller, but 100 times cleaner and more comfortable. The only thing missing was the purring of a cat nearby. And there are no cats in the gala at all. What I also really liked was the complete absence of uninvited tenants such as fleas, mice, bedbugs, and cockroaches. There was nothing scratching, squeaking, or biting anywhere, and there was no need to put the legs of the bed in basins of water. Despite the unusual surroundings, the abundance of impressions and a long journey allowed me to sleep within minutes. I was already dozing off when one of the four-legged inhabitants of the Gava decided to compensate me for the lack of a cat's purr and burst into a melancholy, drawn-out howl, which immediately covered me with pimples like a hothouse cucumber. The dog diligently performed booming roulades, imitating the wind entangled in the neck of a beer bottle. I hoped that, having performed a solo, it would fall silent, but its brothers considered it their immediate duty to pick up the fading note, introduce an element of discord, and delight my ears with a choral melody. The longer I listened, the more suspicious their professionalism seemed to me. They never broke down on the treble, did not break off the pianissimo or burst into vulgar barking. They sang, expressive, artistic, as only purebred wolves can sing. I remember those silent dogs reluctantly giving way to chamomile. Remember their melancholic yellow eyes, grey and brown fur, and hid under the blanket with my head. I love wolves. Their howl fascinates me, but hearing it under an open window is not a test for the faint of heart. However, the gentlemen wolves knew better whom to eat and whom to lull. They put their whole souls into singing, and my own soul, emboldened, got out of my heels and spread throughout my body as it should be. They thought I was sleeping and were talking quietly under the apple tree in the yard. The great dawn breathed fog through the windows. I imagined a mouse, a small grey mouse that I noticed yesterday near the woodpile. The mouse woke up. It crawled out of the hole and, mincing her paws, crossed the yard. Cold drops of dew glistened on the blades of grass like wolf tears. The light fur on its belly was wet and matted. The mouse sat up as a column, dangling its pink paws, and listened. I listened with it. They're making fun of us, Leon. People have always hated us. Not the magicians. Mages are humans too. Do not raise your voice, you will wake her up. Who did they send to help us? First, the master of theoretical magic. We needed a practitioner, young and strong. And they got our old man with glasses. What could he do if this thing ate 3 practitioners before him and didn't even choke? He himself decided to stay. We had to convince him. Now this girl, she's not even a master, an adept in unripe apple, just manufacturing defect. They decided to weed her out this way. My old friend recommended her. If she dies, you will have no friends left among humans, Leon. Send her home as soon as possible. Do you not understand? They will destroy us. They will wipe the gavel off the face of the earth. What? Let the beast do it better? If it doesn't leave the gavel alone, we can always move to Arlis or Lesk. Humans will get us everywhere. Not one of the 12 follies can resist a horde of armed fanatics. It is not even about war. In war, they take prisoners and spare children. And humans do not need us even as slaves. A massacre is coming, Lon. Prevent it before it is too late. Leon was silent for a long time. The mouse sank down on all 4 paws and sniffed. Fine. She will live today. I hope so. I locked on, allowing the mouse to return to its hole. As always, I didn't hear anything good about myself. Unripe apple. Hey, I may be one of the early ones. And as for the sourness, it's even better. Maybe the beast will die from stomach colic. What a disaster. The elders managed to win Leon over to their side. But at least now I know that the monster definitely exists, as well as all the atrocities attributed to it. Unless this performance was plate in my honor. We will take a short 5-minute break here and continue with chapter 7. Just realized that I completely forgot to change the screen. Okay, I'm back. And we are continuing. Chapter 7. I must have fallen asleep again because the room became saturated with a rich pancake smell that could raise a dead man from the coffin. I sleepily pulled my hand out from under the blanket, snapped my fingers, and my clothes flew up from the chair in a flock of sloppy birds, flew across the room, and fell onto the bed. As I pulled my shirt on, I remembered the conversation I had overheard. I wonder if they will wait until evening or kick me out of the gaba right after lunch. A flushed Karina was waiting for me in the kitchen, emptying a pan of dough. Having willingly continued the conversation about the good weather and tasted the pancakes with sour cream, I hardly got up from the bench, suppressed a satiated burp, politely thanked the hostess, and went out into the yard. Chamomile, saddled and dissatisfied, stood at the porch, held by the bridle by a thin teenager of about 13. He started from afar. I admitted that I slept well, ate even better, and in general I liked everything about this place. The guy broke into a gap-toothed smile and promised that the next time I visit them, I won't be disappointed either. I secretively admitted to him that I intended to stay in the Geva forever, and even chose the place where I would be buried, under that aspen tree. They shouldn't have sent me a boy with such expressive face. He successfully portrayed surprise, fear, and confusion, and then timidly said that I had to leave voluntarily, otherwise, he would have to persuade me. I was so full and kind that it didn't turn the innocent child into a toad. Just simply threw a couple of simple but very effective lightning bolts from my eyes, after which sarcastically offered to try me by force. The guy wisely ran away. I was petting Chamomile, anxiously awaiting the continuation. Soon the council of elders appeared before my bright eyes in full force, numbering three, and in three voices hinted that it was time to leave. But I resisted like a chaste nun who is being harassed by three voluptuous men. No, I will not leave the gala, and if they try to push me out by force, they will first have to dig up the aspen tree, the same one that I chose as a tombstone, because I will cling to it with my arms and legs and scream. In case they would doubt the seriousness of my intentions, I grabbed the aspen tree tighter, cleared my throat, and quietly, to test, musically shouted along, "Ah!" The giver had never seen crazy adepts, and all the passers-by wanted to take a closer look at this wondrous phenomenon. But I decided that Little by little was enough, released the aspen tree, and pretended that I had hurt my leg, backing up the scream with appropriate expressions. And finally the Lord appeared, although it was he who should have started this whole act. He looked so impressive that I admit I got cold feet. A golden hoop with a large rhombic emerald shone on his carefully combed hair. The shabby clothes were replaced by a light robe somewhat reminiscent of the teacher's ceremonial robe, and fluttering it seemed without the help of the wind. "You are an adult, smart woman," Leon began pathetically, clearly to please the elders who were tenderly listening to him at a distance. Neither one, nor the other, nor the third, I thought. You must understand the danger you are bringing on your own and our heads by remaining in the Geva. People have taken up arms against vampires. If you don't return to the school safe and sound. Yeah, I've already heard the song, I interrupted disdainfully, and squatting down, touched the edge of the self-moving ropes with genuine interest. Underneath, to my delight, were the same old worn-out pants. John hastily pulled down the hem, secretly showing me his fist. "Then leave." "I will leave, whenever I want." "Why don't you want to right now?" Why wouldn't you want to right now?" suggested the Lord. "And why would I? I like it here. Get fed to death, got told optimistic bedtime stories, and morning circus performances." I straightened up and looked Leon straight in the eyes. The vampire just sighed. "Volha, it will be better this way. Do not think that we're kicking you out of spite. But it is very important for us that humans know the truth about the Geva. We will adequately thank you for your help." Leon looked at me expressively. "Well, at the moment the truth looks like this," I said in an incorruptible auditor's tone. "No creature exists, and the vampires carefully hide what happened to the missing magicians and even kicking me out of the Geva so that I do not have time to get to the bottom of anything." "You won't say that!" He was indignant. "No, I will." "You won't dare." "We'll see about that." If I were a block of ice, I would melt under his gaze. Then he abruptly turned away and left without looking back, with the complete disapproval of external and internal authorities. The Geva was placed at my complete disposal. The day was just beginning. Let's try to make it as fruitful as possible. So, now that I've put my head in the vampire's mouth, what's stopping me from counting his teeth? That is, deprived of the opportunity to serve for the good of society, I'll start educating myself. And while no one bothers me, I'll collect material for my coursework. I started with common truth. Tudor's bloodsuckers served as a practical guide for me. I conscientiously studied it from cover to cover, underlined the most categorical paragraphs, and went out to refute them. The first and foremost home remedy against vampires in the book was garlic. I carefully studied the chapter but did not find any references to the quality of garlic. Should it be winter or summer? Growing out of a tooth or a baby? Are green feathers as well as unripe pinkish heads and inflorescences suitable for defense? For the purity of the experiment, I chose the classic, weighty, juicy last year's garlic with singed roots. All that remained was to calculate the degree of effectiveness and range of action, which is what I did, choosing my host as an experimental vampire. Looking through the window from the yard, I saw her near the stove, surrounded by smoking cast iron pots and shredded vegetables. Krina raised her head and smiled friendlily, which I took as as a signal to action. Putting the garlic head in the left pocket of my jacket, I silently walked past Krina, purposefully looking past her at the comb lying by the mirror. No effect. Having combed my hair to divert the attention, I complicated the experience by putting the garlic into my hand. Well, I guess I was holding it wrong because it did not work again. In the yard, I carefully examined the healing root vegetable. There were no flaws on the outside. Maybe something had gone bad on the inside. I chose the most suspicious clove, flattened it with my heel, and studied the disastrous result. Hmm, I've never seen better quality garlic in my life. Perhaps, perhaps it is crushed garlic that affects vampires? Having sacrificed myself to science, I carefully chewed one clove, after which I had a terrible suspicion that the only vampire in the Geva was me. Fragrant with garlic and trying not to inhale what I exhaled, I approached Karina and, innocently looking into her eyes, asked if the experimental host needed my help. She needed it. She really did. The sauce for the Geva style meat was already boiling and she forgot to peel the garlic for it. And now Karina was torn between the oven and a cutting board strewn with cloves. Well, negative result is also a result. Uh, Having got rid of the garlic taste in my mouth with some difficulty, I moved on to the second series of experiments. This time I hit the optics. Are vampires reflected in the mirrors? In the room on the closet door, there was a medium-sized mirror in a wooden frame, but I've never seen Krina looking into it. Perhaps the mirror was hung specifically for my arrival. I took it off the nail. A dark, unfaded circle remained on the door. This means that it has been here for a long time. But for what purposes? To paint invisible lips? Pluck invisible eyebrows? I sat with my back to the kitchen and placed the mirror on my laps. Most of the sparkling oval was occupied by my sad face with traces of a riotous lifestyle. I moved the mirror higher, at the same time leaning to the side, and the corner of the stove appeared in the mirror. After much effort, almost spraining my neck and arm, I managed to surveil the entire kitchen. The garlic was on the table, the stove damper was pulled back, and white sweetish smoke was coming out of its semicircular mouth. I felt a queasy feeling in the pit of my stomach. Karina really wasn't reflected in the mirror. Without turning around, I heard her fiddling around in the kitchen, rustling her dress and quietly humming a rhythmic song. I felt somehow uneasy. It's very creepy to be in the same room with an invisible person. And I secretly looked over my shoulder. What I saw horrified me. The kitchen was empty, and the singing and rustling did not subside for a minute. I froze, hugging the mirror like a basilisk seeing its reflection. Having brought me to almost heart attack, the hostess danced out from behind the stove with a frying pan at the ready. I peered inquisitively into the dark depth of the mirror. Another great myth has been dispelled. From the street came an enthusiastic child squeal, a woman swearing, very expressive, and several voices, adults and children, shouted my name in different ways. I threw the mirror on the bed and jumped out through the window into the yard. My priceless, fastidious filly was chewing some rag with appetite, not paying the slightest attention to the disheveled woman who was swearing and challenging her right to this something dear to her heart. Based on individual remarks and shouts, I guessed that 5 minutes ago the rag was like celebratory apron, and a washed was hanging on a rope near the neighbor's house. I have no idea how Chamomile fell for it. Until now I had not noticed her ardent passion for laundry. The former owner of the apron noticed me and transferred her righteous anger from the horse's head to the human one. Yep, I died the horse poorly. Yep, I haven't fed her since the morning. But why should you swear like that? Seeing me, Chamomile spat out an apron with such a look as if she had started this whole performance solely for my edification. The neighbor examined the disastrous result, threw the apron in my face, and without mincing words told me how much irreparable damage she had suffered because of my mistakes. I stroked the apron with my palm, whispering the formula, and returned it to its owner unharmed, but for her, the loss of the damage was more difficult to come to terms with than the damage itself. However, as they say, the world is not without good vampires. Neighbors who watched the events unfolding came to my defense. The brawler picked up her apron and left, still grumbling. Don't pay attention to her, baby, Krina advised as she approached. She's a half-breed, half vampire, half troll. You know how grumpy they are. Yeah, you won't find bigger scoffers than trolls. Only market traders from the human tribe can compete with them. And yet, trolls are considered much less dangerous creatures than vampires. And a brief collection of swear words used by trolls is secretly circulated around the school under desks from hand to hand. So, in that short, there are more curses than a human full one. There is one. I read it. Because fate often takes practicing magicians to places whose inhabitants you wouldn't understand without these two reference books. You know, you should take her to the herd, baby, Krina said sympathetically, looking at my saddened face. There is no place for horses in the city center. Where is it? Fifth trail on the northern cross. I asked Krina in more detail about the herd. The horses, it turns out, graze outside the city. They are looked after by an elderly herdsman and his assistants, and if someone urgently needs a horse, they go to him. However, horses are practically not used by city residents. Just to visit relatives in the village, transport something heavy, and the like. Within the city, vampires move on foot. Doesn't anyone get horses just for the sake of it? Of course they do, both for the soul and for training, but this is also, as the herdsman. Practical horse breeding is carried out in the rural sector. It is closer to the border. And from there, also food is delivered on horseback. I thanked Krina, saddled Chamomile, and shook the reins, pointedly ignoring the half-troll who was hurrying to the fountain with two buckets on a painted rocker. Chapter 8. At first I noticed the herd, and only then Chamomile almost crushed a hard-boiled chicken egg with her hoof. It was lying on a napkin along with an onion feather, bread, and a rag with salt. The horseman, who had settled down for lunch in a bush of tall, mint feathergrass, was just about to snack on all of this. I dismounted and politely inquired whether irreparable damage has been caused to the egg, to which the horseman laughed in a good-natured manner and announced that his eggs were in order and were at my complete disposal. I got embarrassed. He became even more amused. I knew this type of Asian men. For them the greatest pleasure is to make a young girl blush. The horseman, like all vampires, was outrageously young, and his words could have been taken at face value, but I was already accustomed to determining the age of the Gavians by their eyes, which was smart, and vice versa. The horseman had very intelligent eyes. I crouched down, took the egg, and hit the blunt end against the stone sticking out of the grass. "You're Volha, right?" the herder slowly inquired, dipping a quarter of an onion in salt. "Mm-hmm. I carefully beat the egg. To my relief, it was without snot, both in the bag. And you? Ran, just ran. Did you bring a horse? I looked up and down at Chamomile. Yeah, oddly enough, it really is a horse. And for some reason, I thought she was a donkey. Chamomile snorted disapprovingly and reached for the slices of bread laid out on a napkin. I plucked a long blade of grass with a heavy spike at the end and slapped Chamomile across the snore. The horse sneezed and retreated. Is it possible to leave her in your care? She is a terrible scammer. You never know what will come into her head. Like, she chewed that apron this morning. With character, like her mistress. The herdsman joked kindly. Unsaddle her, whatever. Let her graze with the herd. But what if I need her? You know how she is? Like, if she wants it, she will let you get her. But if she doesn't want it, she'll wave her tail and, well, try to catch her in an open field. We'll catch her, Ren assured me. Our horses are calm. Maybe they'll rehabilitate your miscapriciousness. The herd just noticed the new girl. The mares snored demonstratively. The stallions dug the ground with their hoofs with interest. There were about 50 of them, tall, lean, well-groomed horses of a breed unknown to me. Long-legged, graceful, muscles rolling in lumps under their shiny skin. The majority are dark red, even in color, not a single spotted one, but there are a few black and white ones. Chamomile tensed, raised her tail, and neighed thinly and pitifully. A snow-white, broad-chested and massive stallion stood out from the herd. Having looked around suspiciously, the horse trotted towards us, raising its legs high. I quickly unsaddled Chamomile and took off the bridle. A wave of trembling ran down the horse's back. The stallion stopped at 40 cubits, flaring his mottled pink nostrils in disbelief. Well, go ahead, don't be cutesy. I slapped Chamomile on the rump. Waving her tail disapprovingly, she moved her thin legs and froze, fluttering her eyelashes like a girl of a marriageable age. The stallion neighed invitingly. The mare lowered her head and plucked a bold patch of white clover once or twice. The gentleman plucked up courage, approached Chamomile closely, and, stretching his neck, touched her ear with his silky muzzle. A loud, angry neigh shook the spicy meadow air. The herd split into a narrow corridor, along with a huge, furious black stallion rushed, along which a huge, furious black stallion rushed, and, without slowing his gallop, crashed into the white one's side. Ridden up, the stallions engaged in a serious duel, biting, kicking, and screaming furiously. Chamomile listened enthusiastically, occasionally encouraging the fighters with a melodic neigh. The night's tournament was held with varying degrees of success, but the white one suddenly chickened out and, leaving a tuft of black mane in tuft of his mane in the black stallion's teeth. Jesus, this is a very weird construction. Took off running. The winner began to trot after him, but the deserter ran away like a hare, and the black horse little by little slowed down. After standing in thought for a moment, he neighed contemptuously after the coward and returned to the herd, pointedly ignoring the charming cause of the conflict. Having picked another bunch of clover, my flirtatious filly slowly wandered after the black one. The stallions slowed down, and soon they were grazing side by side, exchanging glances like conspirators. "It's a pity," I said with a sigh, looking away. "Why didn't you like the white one? Such a beautiful couple would make." "Well, apparently it's not a matter of color." The horseman threw up his hands. "Whose stallion is this?" "Black one?" "The Lord's." A kite hovered in the blue sky above us. Short-tailed and confident, it glided on outstretched wings along the rising air current. A blurry grey shadow ran across the grass. The herder, covering his eyes with his hand, watched the bird with moderate interest. Um, "Do you know how to fly?" I asked the question that had been tormenting me for a long time. The gods did not deprive the herder of a sense of humor. "Well, it depends where you jump from." I fell for the bait. "Well, let's say from that aspen tree over there." "About, hmm, maybe 10 feet?" "With the wind or against it?" "Across." "So you can fly?" I didn't stop asking. "Little one, think about it. Could you fly far on this?" Ren opened his wings and a shadow covered me. The shape and the size of wings resembled two triangular sheets mounted on masts. I timidly touched those devices. "Yeah, you cannot fly on those." The bones are elongated, flattened, and unreliable. The thickest one, coming from the shoulder, is the size of a base of a thumb. The terminal phalanx of thin, fan-shaped bones veins are generally cartilaginous, bending from the lightest breeze. The skin is thin, pigmented to black. Here's another riddle for you. Why does a vampire need wings? Flimsy and unreliable structures on which you can't even glide, because they would tear like a paper umbrella. When I had enough of When I had finished admiring the wings, the horseman folded them into two compact rolls on his back. Most vampires wore their wings half folded, and I had no idea that they could be packed away so neatly if necessary. Throw on a jacket or a cloak, and no one will ever guess that there is a vampire in front of you. That's why raincoats do not go out of fashion. I thanked him and stood up, brushing crumbs off my pants. The road to her took my horse about 15 minutes. She seemed to be running, but not too fast. If Chamomile was not in a good mood, she managed to gallop in one place, kicking her legs like a squirrel in a wheel. How she manages to do this is beyond comprehension. It happened that surprised beggars on crutches were faster than me. And at the same time, I sincerely believed that the horse was galloping very fast. Over time, I got the hang of checking my speed by the flickering roadsides, and it wasn't so easy to trick me anymore. So, the return journey could not have taken more than half an hour on foot. On the way to the herd, I honestly followed the path for fear of getting lost, but the path turned out to be extremely winding, as if two drunken vampires had laid it in ancient times. At times the path forked. To the kite soaring in the sky, it probably seemed zigzag-shaped. And I decided to trample a new path, cutting off the corners of the old one. I should not have done that. After about an hour, I no longer hoped for anything and completely lost heart. That is, I tried to determine the north by the beards of moss on the fallen trunks. The source of my misadventures was the draft effect. For those new to theoretical magic, I'll explain. The draft effect is a distortion of the plane of space, crumpled up like a scratched out sheet. The paths were actually like intersecting fault lines, the shortest path from one point to another. And between them were the humps of crumpled reality. To imagine their scale, compare a smooth sheet of thin stamped paper, elbow to elbow, and the ball size of a hazelnut, to the size of which this sheet can be crumpled. Having turned off the path, I seemed to have straightened the ball, and now I could be in any corner of the sheet and wander around it until I get completely wild. A bleak prospect. The distortion of space does not appear outwardly in any way, but I, a magician, could feel changes in the flow of underground energy lines. Well, you have to pay for everything, including stupidity. Someday someone will find my set skeleton sprouted with forget-me-nots. In the meantime, I had to drag the skeleton inside me, and it seemed too heavy for my tired legs. I sat down on a stump and really, really wanted a pie with jam. I couldn't explain this strange desire in any way, but it kept getting stronger. Here is the gava for you, here is the pie with filling. It's probably faster to go around the perimeter than through the forest. By the way, it is the gava's small size that saves vampires from territorial wars with humans. You shouldn't get involved over 5 square miles, think the kings concerned about the population explosion. But because of 50, 500, gods know how many. Collapsed space is unpredictable. Ants, too. While I was dreaming about the pies, they insidiously attacked me from the rear, climbed up my high boots, dispersed in different parts of my body, and at a signal rushed to attack. Trying not to panic, I hastily shook off the red creatures that were trying to gnaw right through me. And I happened to like apparently I happened to take a rest on an ant trail 5 cubits from an impressive pile of needles and dry leaves, shimmering unpleasantly from the swarming of a countless army. The Gavian forest was famous not only for ants, fly agarics and wolves were also very common. The second appeared among the first as a ghost. Incredibly, fabulously, snow-white beast rested its front paws on a fallen mossy trunk, bowed its forehead and pricked its ears. The black wet nose sniffed with interest towards me. Only two things calmed me down a little. It was alone and far away. Also, I remembered that wolves don't attack in the summer, and I began to think about how to tactfully tell it about this. The wolf licked his maw, showing his healthy pink tongue. He was too curious for a well-fed one, and didn't look like a vegetarian either. And it didn't seem to have any other reasons preventing me from being eaten. Fly agarics and toadstools like salt and pepper shakers beautifully served alone. The wolf's muzzle broke into a satisfied grin, and it jumped onto the trunk. It's a hefty beast, like size of a calf. I wonder, how does that girl from the tapestry behave in such a situation? Probably had a bad ending. Excuse me, can you tell me where the road is? I asked loudly, glaring at the wolf. It closed its jaws, clinking his teeth in surprise. Are you even local? Are you from here? The wolf wagged his tail just in case. Aren't you afraid to walk alone? You know, they say there are vampires here. The wolf let out something like a nervous and jumped off the tree trunk. Thankfully, on to the other side. He shook himself as if it was screwing itself into a stream of air. The muzzle has already stopped and the tail was only gaining momentum. A thought flashed through my mind. What if this is the notorious monster in front of me? The wolf glanced reproachfully at me. Right. If I were him, I wouldn't admit it either. Something crunched behind me. I shuddered and looked around, noticing a fear cone rolling on the ground. I hastily turned back to the wolf, but it has already disappeared, and the strays went cold. Fearfully creeping up to the trunk, I saw clear claw marks on the colorful lichen. The road began immediately behind the trunk. It started out of nowhere, like a snake whose tail was pinched by a fallen tree. The wolf left 3 prints in the dust. Either it fell through the ground or ascended to heaven alive. Having praised both the gods and the demons, I climbed over the trunk, getting dirty in the green mold. I had no choice really. The road led to the led northeast, and that is, it could not be one of the rays of the cross. I didn't know how else to get to the center of the cavern. There was a faint hope of the road merging with the cross, of maybe me meeting a local resident, which took place just around the bend. The stranger vividly reminded me of a rook. A black raincoat, a black jumpsuit, low cut, black boots. No, wait. Black jumpsuit, fully covered with a turtleneck, black boots, black bag with a long twisted strap dangling on the right shoulder. And even the beauty is somehow dark, ominous. A fragile, pale face, as if she had just been released from a crypt. A pointed nose, black eyes, lush black curls coming out from under the hood. The only bright spot was her unnaturally scarlet lips, which the girl periodically bit. In general, an ordinary vampire. She stood on all fours a meter from the side of the road and purposefully picked at the hard forest soil with a sharpened iron shovel. It is unlikely that the rook-like beauty was searching for earthworms. No, she dug in the ground with such enthusiasm as if she were digging up a treasure or a coffin. Having thought about it, I settled on the rejected option, because the girl, having thrown away the shovel, was already with both hands pulling from the ground something resembling an overgrown worm. Tugging on the side, the girl ran around the pit and resumed her titanic efforts. The worm wriggled, resisted, and lashed her in the face with its tail. I decided to intervene. Hey, do you need help? What do you think? The vampire suddenly growled fiercely. Dig it quickly, otherwise it will leave. Looking closer, I recognized the tarry root of the grass worm. Shrinking and pulsating, it tried to slip between the fingers and disappear underground. I began to hastily rake the soil away from the root, while simultaneously grabbing onto it to help the vampire. It was possible to chop off the root, but the remainder would still die, and every inch of it is worth its weight in gold, being part of many potions, decoctions, and other things. The grass worm is not very rare, but it's not easier for a healer to catch it than for a man on foot to catch a hare. About 5 to 10 feet long rhizome ends in an inconspicuous shoot with a greenish flower at the end, which at the slightest danger dives into the ground and waits out troubled times there. Together we managed to overcome the uncooperative grass. Pulled out of the ground, it became limp like a fox's tail or the collar of a Portland merchant's wife. "Thank you, baby," the girl said casually, stuffing the rolled root into a canvas bag, and this bag into a bigger black bag. Baby, little one, kid, even from a fellow herbalist. From the age of 14, only my classmates and teacher called me you informally. And here it was literally everyone. It's like I'm not 18 but 8 years old. Or is the assessment based on intelligence? Then I'm probably 7. "Always at your service, Grandma," I said sarcastically. We made eye contact. The girl knitted her eyebrows in confusion. "What did you call me?" "And you?" The vampire rubbed her forehead and sighed. "But, oh, yes, you're a human. Then, excuse me, young miss." The excessive formality also offended me. "Well, you can leave informal you. After all, we're colleagues." "What?" "Well, I'm a witch," I explained blithely, not paying attention to the long face of my colleague. "Not an herbalist, really, but I passed Journal Herbal Science with an excellent." It seems like storming high school did not inspire confidence in local specialists. "Again?" the girl gasped, shrilly dropping her bag. "What again?" "He went completely crazy." "Who?" It's like he doesn't have enough problems. Now he will be branded a child killer." The vampire stopped short, meeting her gaze with a burnt cherry bush. It seemed to me that something whitish flashed there, but I can't be sure, because the burnt cherry was fading and was whitish on its own. Okay then," the girl sighed with relief, gradually calming down. "I thought you were alone." "Who's the second?" "Well, maybe we can get to know each other first." She dodged the answer. "My name is Kella." "Just Kella," I finished for her. "I do not think I need to introduce myself, although I still can't understand why." "Telemail. It was 2 days ahead of you. Strange that I didn't recognize you right away." "Is it really so difficult to recognize a human in a human?" "There's a lot of people in the Geva, a lot of humans in the Geva," Hell objected. "I can't know everyone by sight. And in general, in our forest you can meet anyone. Those whom you call intelligent races do not shy away from vampires, unlike you humans." When I heard the word humans, I immediately imagined a damp dungeon, a pile of skeletons, dusty blood vials, rusty cages, and other attributes of a dungeon where donors are kept. The fact that human would agree to live in the Gava voluntarily simply did not occur to me. "Then why didn't I see any of them?" I asked cautiously, expecting something like, "Now you'll see," that I would be dragged and locked with the others in the unsanitary conditions of the crypt. Kella got noticeably embarrassed and not only didn't drag me anywhere, but it seems She herself wanted to get out as quickly as possible. They are, they are no longer in the city, but closer to the border. She became completely confused and fell silent. I thought that if some people live in the Geva, it is only because they are not allowed into human cities. The guards at the gate more or less adhere to the clear instructions in this regard. Like, beggars and holy fools should be driven out. I walked to the bird's cherry bush. I knew it. There was a wolf here, I said in an indisputable tone, rubbing between my fingers a piece of wet clay dug out from a deep footprint. Who? The herbalist became wary. Wolf, wolf. Like, like, white, good face. I clarified. Your friend? The herbalist got covered almost in a lichen-like spot. No. Who is then? I didn't want to tease her, just mechanically getting closer to my interlocutor. That's none of your business, Kelly snapped rudely, throwing the strap of her bag over her shoulder. Hey, don't walk away from the answer. I am walking away. With these words, she took a step to the side and disappeared, just dissolving into thin air. Well, I guess she didn't like me. When you are sucked into a crumpled reality, you don't notice it, but the mental health of those around you can seriously suffer. I experimented putting my hand up to the elbow into a gap in space and admiring the even stump. The game of draft effect ended with a firm handshake. I squealed and pulled my hand away. They didn't hold it but released it reluctantly. To the touch, my attacker could not possibly be Kella. The palm seemed large and rough to me, and the handshake itself seemed energetic and abrupt, more masculine. Rubbing my hand on my pants, I studied the unremarkable column of air through which midges fluttered back and forth. What if he decides to continue our acquaintance? The creaking sound of a cart coming out of nowhere right behind me made me jump. Two horses, a piebald horse and a brown horse, jingling the bells on the harness, tried to go around me, turning their shafts to the side of the road. The iron fastenings creaked, and the driver, cursing with no malice, pulled on the reins. The horses obediently stopped. The lead one shook its head, driving away the annoying horsefly. Good day, young maiden, the driver drawled in a booming recitative, jumping to the ground. What did you lose here in the thicket? Well, here I stand and keep on thinking. And does it work? It does. It does indeed. Are you a poet? In the soul, but forever. My mind is filled with rhymes. I can compose them to no end, and then I won't remember lines. How can I... And how can I get out of here? I'm lost and tired. Will you help me? Of course. But tell me first, young lady, have you met a brunette here in clothes the color of a winter night? I'm searching for this raven since the morning. She's left. How long did she? Not very long. Oh, well, and everyone had saw her, some earlier, some later, but some earlier, some later, still no trace. She disappeared in the thick of forest. Oh, who would help me now? What happened? Tooth, that bastard. It aches and aches and wouldn't stop, and as soon as soon as it get as soon as it touched even slightly, the pain shoots from the cheek to ear. Okay, open your mouth and don't close it. Are we eating? Shut up. I'm a witch. Yes, it's inflamed. Don't be discouraged. I'll try it now and great. You, my dear, have a chilled nerve. You should pull out the tooth with the root. Tell me, do you really need it? Ouch! Small bits of... I am so sorry. I tried. Small bits of sweat appeared on the voluntary compulsory patient's forehead. Meanwhile, I was wondering where I could get a jaw, or better yet, a complete vampire skull for the school museum. There were 4 fangs, long upper ones, good half an inch, and short lower ones, quite acceptable even for a human. The rest of the teeth were almost no different from human ones, except that they were dazzlingly white, so rare amongst my fellow humans. My 2 fingers lay on the inside of the gum. With my free hand, I covered the patient's cheek and tried to create a circular flow of warm rays between the fingers of both hands. The vampire's pupils widened in surprise. Cantrip usually means indistinct muttering over a deceased organ, diverting the patient's attention from the magic itself. There are hundreds of mumblings like I'll go into the field, pick wormwood, brew a potion, a tart potion, stir it with a spoon, an oak spoon, etc., etc., causing awe in the patient, which allows you to push your hand deeper into his wallet. The stupider the mumbling, the more muffled and unintelligible the voice of the healer. Like, the stupider the mumbling, the more muffled and unintelligible the voice of the healer. For example, one of my colleagues from the Faculty of Herbalists was listing irregular verbs in the troll language under her breath, which is generally melodious but completely obscene because all the verbs are formed from unprintable nouns. I limited myself to a carefree, not too melodious whistling. At first, the rays seemed to get stuck in the jaw. I felt them fluttering in my fingertips as I tried to concentrate on the continuous flow. But after a couple of minutes, things went smoothly. I paused the treatment and gently touched the gum. Does it hurt? No. Yes or no? I removed my hands, and Vampire closed his mouth and licked his lips in disgust. Then he carefully clipped his teeth and touched his cheek with a finger. Well, I am healed, he suddenly screamed. A miracle has happened. My bliss is endless. Tell me, who are you and where are you from? I am your obedient slave forever. My name is Volha. Well, that was for the rhyme. The would-be poet waved it off. How far is it from the city? A mile with considerable hook. It's an honor to take the valiant magician to the Gaba. Well, anyway, get to the cart. The lead horse leaned on the shafts to the point of creaking. The cart straightened and the harness reluctantly pulled on the lines. As it turned out, there was nothing left to get to the city if, of course, you knew the shortcut along the bends. The vampire took me all the way to the fountain and praised me for a long time, loudly, eloquently, and in rhyme in front of the elders who stared at us in shock from the porch of the meeting house. The rhymer spoke for about half an hour, gathered a crowd of hundreds around him, and with a sweat on his brow explained to them what a kind, sympathetic, and skilled healer I am. But getting slightly overcooked in the rays of glory, I wormed my way into the crowd and slipped away home. Where for me were waiting Krina and pies with the cabbage. Ugh. This is where we end for tonight. Thank you for being here with me, and good night. We will meet next week.